Hello.
Hello.
Please could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, my name is Darren Rose. I'm currently acting as the Grand Master and Grand Hierophant for the Egyptian Masonic Order of the United Kingdom.
Thank you. The first question is, what is the Egyptian Masonic Order of the United Kingdom?
The EMO UK is an independent order that practices the Egyptian Rite. Specifically, our main rite is the ancient and primitive rite of memphismizraim, which was united by General Garibaldi. And we also practice other associated Egyptian rites too. They're optional. We also have various appendant orders and inner orders, and our practice is in the continental style of Freemasonry, although we are quite well aligned to Anglo-Masonry as well in how we practice. And we also admit men and women, so we're a mixed order.
When and how was the order formed?
The order was formed in 2020, although initially it was chartered and we started gathering things together in about 2016. So we've been going, this is our fourth year, yeah, it's been going very well.
Which rite or rites do you practice?
Our main rite is the ancient and primitive rite of memphismizraim, which is a collective rite that joins the rite of Memphis and the rite of Mizraim together, that was constituted by General Garibaldi, but we also practice other associated Egyptian rites as well.
Why is your form of masonry termed Egyptian?
Well, the term originally came into provenance in 18th century Italy, in Napoli, where the rites were constituted, and its original term, it was chosen because of certain ancient Egyptian elements that were brought into the ritual to mystify it and to associate it with the Egyptian past of the classical world. So there are mentions in the high degrees of Isis and Osiris, and from the very beginning of the rite those were there. But the term came to also be semantically associated with terms such as mystical, and in the way that we use esoteric today, the term Egyptian back then had those connotations.
How would you describe the rites of Memphis and Mizraim?
They're a very mystical form of masonry. There's a great deal of focus on the mystical aspects and sources of the symbols. It does differ somewhat in terms of its focus from classical masonry. It has 99 degrees, 90 of which are practical. And although this seems like an enormous amount and impossible to get through in a lifetime, what we do is we practice key degrees, and then the degrees in between those are workshopped. There is the option of practicing every single one of them individually. They all have their own rituals and their own transmissions, but the key degrees work to help people work through the system at the points where it's the most important. In a similar way to how UGLE structures its order beyond the craft with the Royal Arch and then the Rose Croix.
What is the purpose of the EMO UK and why was it formed?
Well, I became a Mason in 2006, and my original intent was to explore Masonry as an esoteric practice, and many of my brethren that joined at the same time had the same interest. Classical Masonry, though, is much more social and much more focused on making good men better in a practical way, and of course on charitable works, which is excellent. But we felt we wanted something deeper. So from there I explored other forms of practice such as Martinism and Elu Cohen and the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and various offshoots, and I found those very interesting. But I asked myself, is there a form of Masonry that has some of these esoteric elements as part of the structure? Because as a Mason I still wanted to practice as a Mason, and I discovered memphismizraim in the Egyptian Rite, and it was perfect. It was exactly what I was looking for. So we started the order so that other brethren could have access to the rites in the English-speaking world.
Where are your lodges and sanctuaries located?
Well, our Grand Lodge and Grand Sanctuary is located in central London, and that's because that's where we started. But we are slowly starting to grow and expand. And if anyone who's interested in helping us do that, we have an administration that's set up to make that as smooth as possible. So the centre of the order currently is in the UK.
As an Anglophone order, will you be opening lodges in other countries too?
We are actually in discussions for this. Originally, we wanted to create an Anglophone order so that the rites of Memphis Mizraim were available for the English-speaking world, because there was a need, I think, for access and a sort of solid structure and a solid administration to support the rites in a practical way. However, brethren from other countries have voiced a great deal of interest in the rite, that have come to visit and have learned not only about how we practice the rite, but about the curriculum that goes with it. And so there is a push to provide translations for brethren in other countries, which we've now set up a way of doing that's secure, so that the transmissions are protected. And of course, that's wonderful. We're quite happy to share the rite with other people in other countries if they feel it suits their needs.
Egyptian Masonry seems to be increasing in popularity. What do you believe are the reasons for this?
I think it's mainly because of the Egyptian culture. There's a global fascination for ancient Egypt. 4,000 years of continuous culture, beautiful hieroglyphs, amazing religious texts, a wonderful history, and that's always fascinating for people. It's fascinating for me. But I think the fact that that's combined with masonry, which is a really interesting mystical practice, it's intriguing, I think, to people who have heard the term the Egyptian Rite and want to know what it's about. Certainly our newer members who've joined were motivated by that. And I think for Masons who are already members of more classical forms of Masonry, if they're looking for something deeper and something more mystical, then we appeal on that level as well.
Do you have literature other than the website and Facebook page?
Well, at the moment, our main literature is sent out to members. We have a great deal of literature within the order, but public literature we've kept to a minimum, because we're not really a public order. We are more of an occult order. We're quite concealed, but we have this public face. But there has been a certain pressure on me to start to create some content for the public, so they know a little bit more about us and how we practice. So to assist this, we created Kneph magazine, which is available twice a year for the public. They can download that for free. And I'm also, I've also agreed to do these interviews so that there's something visible, a human face to the order, because we're otherwise so concealed.
In your opinion, what relevance does Egyptian Masonry have in today's metamodern society?
I do think Masonry of all kinds teaches perennial truths. I do think there are elements of it, especially in the high degrees, that are constantly relevant for any human being. It reflects the human experience, and it reflects the human experience of the other, of the mysterious, and of the cosmic. And it does this in a way that is harmonious with both science and religion, which is one of its wonderful qualities. It's also harmonious with morality. And so I think that having that stable base is what makes Masonry so perennial as a practice, and it's why it's lasted so long. Although there may be elements that perhaps need modernisation or representing for a new generation of people, there's always going to be something in there that people are glad that they sought and found. When I became a Mason, it was the early 2000s. It wasn't that much less technologically advanced than it is today. We had the internet, we had mobile phones. I was a young person. I thought, will this be relevant to me? And it absolutely was. All of the things I was looking for in mystical programs and so forth, I found the root of all of those images, the root of all of that culture, was accessible through Masonry. And so yes, I think anyone who comes to us who's interested in that will definitely find what they're looking for. And certainly with Egyptian Masonry, which is overtly mystical.
How much importance does your order place on charity and charitable activities?
A great deal, as with all other forms of Masonry. It's very, very important that Masons do what they can to lighten the load of their fellow man, but also to make sure that the focus of being a Mason is about improving the world as well as oneself. The two are mutually inclusive. You can't do one without the other, essentially, whichever perspective you choose. So in our lodge, we certainly collect for charity. The usual practice is that we collect every time there is a meeting. The brethren donate. They can donate directly through giving money, or they can donate to the charity account. And then at the end of the year, the master who's been in the chair decides where that money goes and to which charity it's given. Last year we gave to a cancer clinic, and we think it's very, very important to be charitable, and not just charitable in terms of giving money, which is wonderful, but to be charitable in the heart. There's no point, I think, in giving without feeling a sense of compassion and responsibility towards your fellows. That's really, really important, and it blesses the gift, in my opinion. I think it makes it more important, and it sweetens the effect, and it also helps us to remember to be grateful for what we have and don't need to be given.
Masonry has always been a very social pursuit. Is this the same in your order, or are there differences?
Well, I think in terms of people getting along and enjoying each other's company, that's definitely part of our order as well. We always have a good laugh and we enjoy each other's company. We're verging on raucous sometimes. It's when the energy of the ritual has affected us. But our main focus isn't just on creating a meeting place or a club or a dining club for people. We're not focused mainly on the social aspect of Masonry. We have deeper aspects as well. So because we're all attracted to the Egyptian Rite for mystical reasons, the main topics of conversation tend to be philosophy, astrology, hermetics, alchemy. Those are the main topics that we converse on, but we also study them. So that kind of underpins our social interaction, but it certainly doesn't stop us having a good time. We're not sort of sitting around in dusty robes with long beards, looking at strange implements. We are actually having a laugh and being real people. Otherwise, what's the point?
What's your opinion on the proliferation of independent Egyptian lodges, orders and hierophanies?
That's interesting. I think perhaps it depends on perspective. In one sense, variety is a good thing. I don't think one size fits all with anything, and not even in Masonry. Although I believe that Masonry as a practice has a fundamental core that does not change and will always be important. I think having various orders that focus on different aspects of the tradition is a good thing. It doesn't all have to be a monoculture, but I think there are different reasons for how these things are developed. When it's because a group of people are really interested in a particular rite, for instance, and they feel that practicing that will really add value to their Masonry, then that's fantastic. But if the cause is argument, drama, people showing bad faith, people falling out, bad behaviour, that I'm less impressed by. And although it can be difficult to avoid on a lodge-to-lodge basis, you never know how people are going to mix. It's one of those chemical reactions that one can't always control. I think there are things in place to try and protect us from the worst aspects of that. And I do believe that it's the duty of senior Masons to make sure that those things are adhered to. And we certainly try to in our order. You can't always get it right, but I think you have to have a commitment to harmony at all costs, actually, I would say.
What is your opinion of online orders, the impact of social media, and the problem of so-called fake orders which only have an online presence?
That's interesting. Okay, having a presence online for an order can be useful for making outreach, for communicating with the public and with people who are interested. I think that's healthy because, we're societies with secrets, not secret societies. It's important also that we're visible so that we're accountable. So having an online presence, I think, is necessary for all businesses, but certainly for Masonry. The problem is, I think, when there is only an online presence, when the lodge isn't meeting in person, when there are no human figures to attribute the lodge to, where people aren't actually practicing and meeting together. I realise that in a post-COVID environment, people are very paranoid about meeting, and that's understandable, but we can't live in silos for the rest of our lives. We have to start interacting, and if we are, it should be with things that we find have high value. And I think Masonry is one of those things. So in terms of the existence of online faces to the order, I think that's necessary. But people need to use their discernment, I think, in choosing which order they join. And the order should always have a company. It should be visible. It should be holding meetings. It should be holding interviews. and the main people who run it should be, if they're not publicly known, because some Masons prefer to conceal their involvement, they should certainly be people you can access by email, telephone, or message.
How much attention does your order give to the latest innovations and discoveries in the contemporary sciences, in technology, in quantum theory, and so on?
As much as any brother or sister is directly involved and directly interested in it, I think Masonry always has a perspective that is perennial, that is about the things that don't change in human experience of reality and of the self and of the mind and of the internal world. But I think that you wouldn't be a Mason if you weren't fascinated and 100% behind these new discoveries that human beings are making. Human beings are amazing creatures. We have the power to invent, to perceive, to investigate, and to analyse. And the product of this is the highest forms of culture that we currently have. And I think that a Mason would celebrate anything that innovates and improves life for human beings and extends our powers further and gives us a greater quality of life. And of course, that's the point. It should be a quality of life that all people can access. And that's why I think, yes, anything that pushes us forward to the horizon is a good thing. As long as we don't confuse expansion with the idea that progression is eternal. I think some things are cyclic, and I think some things are already perfect as they are and don't necessarily need improvement. They need to be appreciated, which is a slightly different perspective on things. But that's my personal perspective.
Thank you, Grandmaster.
My pleasure.